Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name's Tommy. I'm a recovered alcoholic. It's probably the most important thing I'll say today. I'm sober by the grace of God, the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the principles embodied in the 12 steps of recovery. And I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm happy that each and every one of you are here. And I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Branny for asking me to talk today. What a wonderful day it is. I'm here to celebrate life and living and to be receptive to the will of God in all of my affairs. And what a good life I have. I have a wonderful life. I have a wonderful life, a good life, a happy life. I'm a happy alcoholic. You know, I live down on Venice Beach. On the west side in AA, I'm known as Hurricane. Recently downgraded to a tropical storm. Maybe even a light winter breeze. And I could tell you a little story about how I got that AA name, but I want to back up a few Christmases ago, because Christmases are always, the holidays always affect me in very odd ways. A couple of Christmases ago, I was at the Santa Monica Mall, and I actually went into a shopping blackout. And I came to in my car, and there were a lot of bags around me. And I had a vague memory of going into these department stores with a piece of plastic. And I immediately went back into another shopping blackout, and I ended up over at King's Western Wear on Van Nuys Boulevard. And I was shaking the hand of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I came to, and I thought I was hallucinating. I wasn't, actually. He was there buying some riding gloves with his bodyguard, and I had some more bags with me, and they were jeans and Western shirts and Tony Lama boots, but it didn't stop there. It continued. I ended up over on Van Nuys, over on Ventura Boulevard, at a place called SFO, which was another department store. And I walked out of there with a motorcycle jacket, and I didn't even have a motorcycle. And it's still very, very graphic in my memory that alcoholism, because it's not a wasn't, manifests itself in so many different ways in my life. But you know, I love to eat. And in fact, I've been praying to God Almighty to take this spare tire that's around my waist and put it in the trunk where it belongs. And a little voice came back and said, put a Post-it on the refrigerator. God is not in here. And so there's so much to talk about, there's so much to say, and there's so much to recognize. And last Christmas, actually, I was going down Ventura Boulevard, and they had just opened a new shop. It was a Haagen-Dazs ice cream parlor. And it was like my car was on automatic. It just turned around. I saw this flashing light in the ice cream parlor shop, and I stopped, and I just went in for a sample. And the little clerk that was there gave me a sample, and she looked at me, and I went out, and it wasn't more than 4 hours I was back at that ice cream parlor getting a cone. Vanilla, Haagen-Dazs vanilla ice cream. And I must tell you that I love vanilla ice cream. I could eat a tub of it. But the next day I went back for 2 cones. And the third day I went back for a pint. Now this third time that I went back, this young clerk looked at me with those eyes that I didn't know if they were of pity or contempt. And my mind told me that she said, "Oh, here he is again." And I knew that I had a problem with ice cream. Because I would take my friends. We would go to meetings. And I had found this place, the 7-Eleven store down by my condo, and they sold trays of these Haagen-Dazs ice cream bars, light chocolate. And we would go to a meeting, and I would take my friends over there, and I would buy a whole tray of that Haagen-Dazs ice cream. But one night I went in, and they were out of the Haagen-Dazs ice cream. They only had the Dove bars, that's with the thick chocolate, the black chocolate. And I went over to the clerk, and I said, "Where are the Haagen-Dazs ice cream bars?" He says, "We're out." And I nearly went over the counter. And I knew at that moment that I had a problem with ice cream. And I could tell you example after example of how alcoholism manifests itself in me. See, it's a hidden disease. It's not a conscious disease. And it can talk to me, even if I'm sitting in a meeting. In fact, I ask myself often, what's my disease doing right now? What's it telling me? How's it looking at other people? See, I have a mind that talks to me, and it talks to me with such power, with such authority, that it is the source of supply for my life, always has been. Up until today, I get up and I comb my hair, I bathe myself, I dress myself. I take care of me as an authority for my life, in my life. But I fly a lot, and wherever I fly, I always fly on American Airlines, because it's got a big AA on the tail of the wing. And I feel very, very safe in that aircraft. The attendants come around and they give you these little napkins. It's got AA on it. And there was a couple behind me on my last flight, and they were drinking out of these little bottles of wine where you screw the top off of them. And the wife of this gentleman asked her husband, who were those 2 brothers that were responsible for flight? And her husband looked at her and said, Ernest and Julio Gallo. And I immediately identified with that state of mind, with that condition. You see, because alcohol used to give me wings to fly, and then it took away the sky. There's so much to talk about the disease of alcoholism, because it's not a wasm, it's an ism. And an ism means it's alive right here, right now, if it isn't treated. And you can't treat alcoholism. I mean, wouldn't that be something if I could put it in a refrigerator and lock it up, put it away someplace? I can drive right into my alcoholism. I can drive right into my alcoholism just by getting behind a wheel of a car. I'll give you a good example of that. It wasn't too long ago I went to one of those traffic schools. And there actually was a highway patrol officer who was the instructor. And when they got to that section on alcoholism, he said, we're going to teach you something today about the disease of alcoholism. And he brought out 2 bowls There were goldfish bowls. In one of them was a little worm, an earthworm, swimming around in pure water. And the other one was empty, and it was pure alcohol. And he said, I'm going to teach you something about alcoholism. And he took the little worm out of the pure water, as it was swimming around freely, and he put it into the pure alcohol. And the little worm dissolved. And he put this question to the class. He said, what does that teach you about alcoholism? And there was an active alcoholic in the back of the class. He says, if you drink alcohol, you won't get worms. See, alcohol did so much for me. It did so much to me. And I come from a long line, legions of alcoholics. I'm British. I was born in London. That's not a requirement to get to Alcoholics Anonymous, but it certainly helps. My old man was known as the town drunk, and the town was London. And to this day, I believe that when they put him in the ground, I'm sure that they put a bottle of scotch in there, just in case. Just in case. I have two sisters. In fact, my older sister, and she is my older sister, she 12-stepped me into this program, and she doesn't let me forget that. And I came to the United States at a very young age, and I was 12 years old, and I had my first drink. And that was like turning on a switch, setting up a demand for more alcohol in my system. From that very first drink to my last drink, which was a bottle of Blue Nun Laufermilk. They say in German that Laufermilk means mother's milk. And I got that bottle, it had a cork in it. I got that bottle at a local 7-Eleven store. It was at 5 minutes to 2. And I always wanted to be a wino with a checkbook. In fact, I lived in Napa Valley, the Valley of the Moon. And believe me, alcoholics know how to howl at the moon. In fact, there's a full moon tonight. And there'll be some alcoholics out there howling at the moon. And when I would visit Napa, when I left there, there were 8 major wineries. I return there periodically now, and there are over 200. And an interesting tradition that they have in the Alano Club in Napa, California, they don't give you chips. They give you corks for your time. Wine corks. And that's to plug the jug. And I thought, you know, only a brilliant alcoholic could come up with that idea. So there's so much to talk about, there's so much to say, there's so much to recognize and identify about the disease of alcoholism, because it's not a wasm, it's an ism. It's a mind power, mind functioning disease that regulates and controls my life in this day if it isn't treated. And they used to say this was a treatment for drunks. This was called fixing drunks. These meetings, the very meeting that we're having today. There's so much to talk about. You know, and I hope I do not offend anybody by this little story that I'm going to tell you, because they say that sort of everything leans to the southwest in this country, and if it isn't tied down, it ends up in Los Angeles. And there is a facility in downtown where you could get a brain transplant. Wouldn't that be something if you could go and get a head transplant? If you could lock this thing up, if you could freeze it some way. Well, there's this fellow, he was interested in seeing what sort of brains they had. So he went to this facility, asked the good doctor there, and he said, "Doc, what sort of brains do you have?" He says, "Over here I've got a lawyer's brain, it'll cost you $25,000. Over here I've got a doctor's brain, it's going to cost you $50,000. And over here I've got a rabbi, priest, or minister's brain, that's going to cost you 75 grand. And in the corner I've got an alcoholic's brain, that's going to cost you $100,000. And the man looked at him and he says, "Doc, why does an alcoholic's brain cost so much?" And the good doctor replied, "Because it's never been used." So there's nothing wrong with the alcoholic's brain. I'm talking about that 3.2 pounds of meat behind my eyeball. But there is something terribly wrong with my mind. There is something terribly wrong with my mind. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Because that first drink and that last drink are very important. And I'll tell you the reason why. I'm a product of the 60s. I'm also a product of Alcoholics Anonymous. And being a product of the 60s, I had long hair, I had glazed eyes, I reeked of patchouli oil, and I wanted to change the world. And I didn't change very much. There was so much to say, so many good things that came out of the 60s. An awareness came out of the 60s. Civil rights, environmental issues, a movement, a generation. And I was one of those people, one of those flower child. And I lived up and near San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury, Berkeley. And it was truly a time and an experience. And a lot of good things came out of the 60s. And a lot of people came out with their feet firmly planted on the ground. But I was one of those people in the 60s that got lost. I was one of those lost souls that got lost in the drug culture. And what the drugs did for me then, I didn't know what I know now. But I learned through Alcoholics Anonymous that it accelerated my alcoholism. Literally, overnight. And I crossed over a line in August of 1968. They called it the Summer of Love. And what a summer it was. And I crossed over this line, and in a moment, my life ended. My life changed. Because in that moment, when I crossed over that line, I was 21 years old. And I crossed over the line and I lost the power of choice. And I could not remember the suffering, the humiliation of even a day, a week, or a month ago. I crossed over into the disease of alcoholism. And that's when most alcoholics of my type, a defeated alcoholic, drinks to treat their alcoholism. Because what a drink will do, what a drug will do, is to treat my mind. And that's what happened to me. You see, it tells me that on page 23 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. that the problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind and not in his body. And when I had that experience, I first ended up in a hospital, my first funny farm. And I was strapped down to a table that was bolted down to a cement floor. And I had electrodes put to my temples. And I had so much Edison medicine that to this day I don't even go near an AC wall socket. And I went from one Goonie bin to the next funny farm, to the next laughing academy, deeper and deeper into the disease of alcoholism. And I didn't know what had happened to me. I didn't know what was wrong with me. That I was suffering from a disease that was untreated called alcoholism. It is a mind power, mind functioning disease that regulates and controls my life in this day if it isn't treated. So for the next 4 or 5 years, I was lost. In fact, even in sobriety, I can get lost. Just in a conversation. In fact, I can get lost in just about anything if I'm the same man sober as I was drunk. So there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to say. There's a lot to identify. There's a lot to expose about the disease of alcoholism. And it needs a treatment. And that's what this is, a treatment for the disease of alcoholism. But I'll move forward a little bit and I'll tell you a little what a psychiatrist said to me in 1973. He said, "Tom, you've been like a revolving door. You've been in and out of these nut houses. You've got to stop this. You've got to get a job. You've got to get an alarm clock. And I took his advice. I got an alarm clock. I got a job. I met a gal. I got married. And I started to construct a life for myself. But there was something in me, and I didn't know what was wrong. There was something wrong with me. And for the next few years, I attempted to be what I appeared to be, which was a husband, a son, a brother, with a home. But there was something in me, other than me, that I couldn't understand. It was the disease of alcoholism. And it truly is what's been spoken about here today, what's spoken about in every Alcoholics Anonymous meeting around the world. And it is all over the world. And wherever I've gone, it's the same mind. And it's the same application of the 12 steps of recovery for the disease of alcoholism. So there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to say, and there's a lot to expose in the day that I'm in. It took me up until October 2nd, 1982, to finally come to you. And when I crossed over that threshold into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, October 2nd, 1982, I heard a man speak and tell his story. And for the first time in my life, I looked into people's eyes. I saw the laughter. I heard the joy. And I heard a man, and I identified. From that day to this, I came away from it with an answer. And it was a treatment for the disease of alcoholism. And for the first year and a half that I was in this program, I had such a difficult time just staying in the rooms. I had such a I have a wandering mind. And I couldn't keep my mind in the room. I would literally leave the room, and people would come out and hold me down and talk to me. And I'm so grateful that there were those people that loved me in that way, because I was able to stay here for that first year and a half, and it was so difficult for me, because I truly did not know what was wrong with me, whether I would be able to get this program or not. And when I was a year and a half sober, I was sitting in a candlelight meeting at Chandler Lodge in North Hollywood. My home group was Radford, and dear Alabama Carruthers was there. And she would always get up in that southern voice, and she would say, if you maintain that attitude of gratitude, son, you're liable to stay sober one day at a time. And I had a home group, and I was in this late night meeting, and it was a candlelight meeting, and there were shadows on the wall, and I would always be preoccupied with whether or not I turned off the coffee pot at my home. And somebody would touch me, and I would just jump up startled. And a man got up, and he said, he was 6 months sober, he was from Denver, and he identified when he took a chip, and he says, my name is so-and-so, I'm a recovered alcoholic. And I'd heard about recovery, but I'd never heard it put in that term, recovered. It said that he got well. And I went up to him after the meeting, and I'm a year and a half sober, and I looked into this man's eyes, and I knew he had something that I didn't have, that there was something missing in my life. And he introduced me to his sponsor, and it was a fellow by the name of Hank Miller. He was gotten sober in 1951 from Chicago. And he had lived in Denver, and he had taken this man through the steps and then had come on out to Los Angeles. He gave me his card, and he said, call me if you need some help. And that's what I did about 4 days later. And it's graphic in my memory what happened to me that day. For the next 4 or 6 hours, I was with that man, and he introduced me to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a program of recovery. It's not a program of failure. It is a program of recovery. This is certainly the port of last call. It don't get any better than this. This is as good as it gets. And I've got a good life. I got a happy life. I could tell you all the things that have happened to me over the last 22 years. Because what that man did for me, I could not do for myself. God had put the person into my life that I needed to have right at that moment. And I have done this often. I've done increments. I've done a pitch on increments of 5. 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and 20 to 25. And I could tell you so much that's happened to me. But one of the things that I want to talk about, and it's so important for my life because my life is important for me today. This is sacred. This is a sacred place for me. My feet are on sacred ground. You see, I've accepted who I am, what I am, and why I'm here. And I'm here because I'm not all there. And I need help. And I need help greater than human help. Because I'm a defeated alcoholic. Glass in hand, it tells me. Glass in hand, I warp my mind. I've got an injured, aberrated mind. It's hurt. It's perverse. But it also promises me in that same paragraph that I have a program of recovery if I do certain things. But I have to accept this devastating weakness and all of its consequences. And you see, I always thought that the weaknesses were the institutions, the hospitals, the authorities, the bars, the bottle, the women. No, it's this mind. You see, Alcoholics Anonymous took away the very thing that treated my alcoholism. It took away the alcohol. It took away the drugs. What am I left with? I'm left with the alcoholism. It's a mind power, mind functioning disease that regulates and controls my life in this day. And it's a power, and it's an authority in my life, for my life. And then it goes on to tell me that under the lash of alcoholism, I'm driven to Alcoholics Anonymous, and there I discover the fatal nature of my situation. This is life and death. Without this, I have nothing. I must hear this message, and I must hear it every day. It's not my message. I don't have a message. My message will get you sick. But this message will get you well. Because it goes on to say that I must be open-minded to the conviction and willing to listen as only the dying can. Can you imagine an alcoholic listening to another alcoholic? That's a miracle. And every day we need a miracle, just like today. I've hit the jackpot again. I'm here to celebrate life. I'm here to celebrate living by being receptive to the will of God in all of my affairs. Please, God, don't let me be Tom today. You know, there's a book out. It's called The Power of Now, and it's a Buddhist. He's asked a question to define Buddhism. He said simply, no self, no problem. Self has been the problem all along. The bondage of self. So where do I go from here? What do I have to do? I don't have to understand this. I just have to do what it tells me to do. And there's two concepts here that I must have. A concept of a power that's greater than me, that can do for me what I can't do for myself, and a method, which is the application of the 12 steps of recovery in performance. If I petition to a loving, living God, He will answer my prayer. But there's a second part to it, a performance. I don't know what that will be today. Maybe it'll be one of these fellows or gals come up and hit me up for $1. I don't know what it'll be, but God will provide that for me. And maybe that's what's happened for me, is that after so many years in Alcoholics Anonymous, there was something wrong, and there was something missing in my life. And it was that power. Because you see, that's been my problem all along, the lack of power to change. I lacked the power to change. And now I have to have a change of character with no reference to the old character whatsoever. No reference to the old character. That's like a tattoo in my mind, that character that I brought here, that character that I built. My mother didn't build that character. No bartender built that character. I built that character. And that character I brought here. And it started when I was a juvenile delinquent. I went to a party in 1960, and it ended in 1982. Thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to say. There's so much to recognize. And I just want to thank Branny again for asking me to talk. It's just, there's so much to talk about in the good life. You know, because I can tell you what has happened over the years for me in this program. I've gone through divorce. I've gone through medical problems. I have gone through work-related problems. The most recent, I heard a man say this, and I tell you, it changed my whole outlook on my business affairs. In the last few years, I hadn't been doing very well. And I heard a man share, and he said he made God his business partner. Isn't that beautiful? And I went home, and I prayed with such sincerity, with such authenticity, the truth. It was the truth. It wasn't 2 days. And it opened up for me. And it's been opening up more and more and more. And I'm not talking about asking for things, the material life. I have more than I will ever need, believe me. But God has that ability in my life to not only give me material prosperity, but He gives me emotional and mental prosperity. There is so much to talk about in that relationship, just like I'm talking to you right now, just like I'm talking to a friend. God, will you help me? Will you be with me? Will you do for me what I can't do for myself? You know, I tell you, I get up to my old tricks all the time. And all I got to do is look at my watch. Forgive me, God, I've been gone an hour and a half, but I'm back now. Can you help me? And it's that immediate. It is that instantaneous. It is that consistent. And it says that in the 12 and 12 in the foreword on page 15. It says AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in nature, if practiced as a way of life, will expel the obsession to drink and allow the sufferer to live happily and usefully whole. And that's all I've ever wanted, is to be happy, to be useful, and to be happy, to have a whole, healed mind. And that's what I have lacked, the soundness of mind. And this power has done for me what I couldn't do for myself. Because you see, why would I keep going back to the very thing that brought me here in the first place? Why would I keep going back to this mind? Because believe me, it's old ideas. Anything that my mind produces is an old idea. Preconceived ideas, preconceived notions, they're all old ideas. I must go to something now that can do for me what I can't do for myself. And that's a loving, living God. And that's what I've always wanted. You see, it's just like learning. When you learn something new, that belongs to you. No one can take it from you. And God is the same way. Once God enters into your hearts, it's a miraculous thing, because no one can take that away from me. You see, I have everything now. Before I had nothing. How come? Because of a loving, living God in my life. And I talk to God just like I'm talking to you. But more importantly, I want to leave you with this, because God loves you, and I love you too. And there's so much here in Alcoholics Anonymous to have in the good life. You know, I have a wonderful relationship with a woman, and I used to throw relationships away. Women that loved me, real good. And I've had a relationship that just, in the years that I have been with her, I've never looked at her funny. I've never said one word. Because believe me, if I allow it into my mind, I'm liable to say it. And if I say it, she's not going to be loving me too long, let me tell you. Because I'll turn on her like a rattlesnake. Because I have to accept this devastating weakness and all of its consequences. And its consequences are that I hurt people. I know how to hurt you, man. And I can look at you with that look. And I don't, because I have something, a guardian to my mind, that protects me from this mind. A loving, living God in my life. So Merry Christmas to each and every one of you, and I'm just so happy to be here, and I'm happy that each and every one of you were here today, and thank you for listening to me.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs, long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.